I'm starting to see this trend that developers are going to be making excuses for when a game fails, especially a game that they had a hand in making. And it's starting to become almost a regular occurrence when developers come out and talk about how sometimes there's this shadow form of gamers that are attacking their games and making them fail before they even had a chance to be successful. Well, I want to dive into one of the most crazy stories that I've read in a very long time, which surrounds a game called Mindseye, made by a company called To Build a Rocket Boy. Now, I have to say that the CEO, all the people within that studio have come out and talked about how their game, which launched in a very weak state, are having these sabotaging effects surrounding their whole entire studio. AKA, there's these people out there that are intentionally trying to kill their game before it launched and are trying to continuously take it out even as it's getting supported by their own people. So I want to talk about this whole trend happening because it's not just a Mindseye studio talking about this. It's a bunch of other developers that can't seem to fathom that maybe you just built a really bad product and maybe this is gamers telling you you built a bad product. So let's get into everything because honestly, this is completely wild and kind of out of left field of what developers and gamers are being treated as. All right, so you know the drill. If you want to stay up to date on the gaming news and everything going around the games industry, hit that like button, hit that subscribe channel. It helps out the channel more than you know. All right, so Mindseye. People saw this game being announced a little over a year ago. There was a couple trailers out there, and it was being touted as the game that was a GTA killer or something similar to GTA because a lot of the people that are from that studio are former employees of Rockstar. So, hand in hand, when you see something like Mindseye get announced with this pretty decent trailer that came out, people thought, man, this looks like GTA. But then as you start to examine a lot of the stuff within the game and the gameplay, it's starting to crumble under its own weight. Now, I have to say that when the game was announced and I saw it, I didn't think that it was going to be something that just flops out of the blue. I thought, I'm not really interested in it because I know it's not going to match what GTA is. Well, over the last several months before its release, a lot of people started to kind of bag on the game and put it down because it didn't look like a high quality release that was coming out anytime soon. Not to mention, I think the comparisons to GTA really hurt it. But the big thing is that the studio behind that game was still putting out advertisements, still talking about it. And when it launched, it absolutely flopped. The game did not do well. It came out buggy. It has a horrible Metacritic score. People talked about it ad nauseum about how bad it was. YouTubers, content creators, everybody was just basically like, this game wasn't made very well. It wasn't ready for launch. And we need to push this aside and not even talk about it anymore. And the game just vanished to me. It just moved on. I haven't thought about that game in so long until now, where we're starting to see the CEO and the people running the studio starting to talk about how they felt like there's this grand conspiracy to sabotage their game, not really looking internally to see if it's them that sabotaged it. And this seems to be something that's going around the whole games industry. I made a video a little bit ago about Highguard, and Highguard didn't blame the gamers or the people attacking their game. Other people just said that some of the reviews shouldn't be counted because they didn't play the game, blah, blah, blah. Highguard kind of looked internally and said, hey, we messed up by showing this at the Game Awards and are just starting to bring out a bunch of content and patches for the game and making the game that they build talk for themselves and having the gamers help shape what the game should be or what the gamers want. I'll give credit to them. They are patching it. They are giving it its stuff. Is it going to survive? I'm not sure. The other side of that is Mindseye. Mindseye's developers decided to just point the finger at everyone else instead of themselves, including making this whole grand conspiracy, which this article mentions here about the CEO. Mindseye co-CEO Mark Gerhardt has alleged in an internal meeting with Build a Rocket Boy employees that they have caught the guys who sabotaged Mindseye in an alleged €1 million campaign. In the meeting, which took place in late January and was sent to Insider Gamer on the condition that the video not be made public, Gerhardt opened the call by saying they caught the guys who've been sabotaging Mindseye. He alleged that the company behind the campaign was a very big American company, but that it's probably not the company you're thinking of. Gerhardt alleged that the smear campaign had a budget of over €1 million spent in 2025, and that the big American company allegedly paid the UK-based company, Ritual Network, who he claims are a bunch of gangsters, to carry out the sabotages. According to Gerhard, the company has been paying several influencers, including somebody named Cyberboy. An influencer Gerhard recently threatened with a cease and desist via Discord 3 journalists and Build a Rocket Boy employees to harm Mindseye and Build a Rocket Boy's reputation. In the meeting, Gerhard alleges that all of these individuals will all be served in-person criminal complaints shortly, and that the criminal charges are for espionage, sabotage, and criminal interference. Holy... what? So, okay, let's talk about that. Let's wrap that all up here. So in the article, I'm going to be looking at it here, he's talking about that there's people not only outside that are trying to sabotage the game, aka people that are making YouTube content creators, things like that, and journalists within the games media, but also people internally, aka their own employees, are sabotaging the game. I'm sorry, but that just sounds so outlandish and almost kind of crazy that somebody thinks that I didn't build a bad game. I think it's everyone else surrounding me that's built a bad game, aka my own employees and the people that are trying to sabotage it. Instead of looking internally, realizing you released a broken mess that people couldn't really get behind because it really did come out that buggy in the launch of this game, you instead thought, no, there's something else going on. There's other forces that are hurting us because we made a great game. That sounds great to me. And speaking of those internal forces, I did some digging and I wanted to look back on what else Mindseye has had, what other CEOs have said, whether people, directors, whatever, or former employees. Well, I ended up finding a couple articles talking about how some of the development process in this has been a nightmare. And these are former employees talking to the BBC and other networks about how this game didn't have the greatest of productions or development over the last several years. And that's what this article talks about here. Critics and players called it broken, buggy, and the worst game of 2025. Addressing staff via a video link, the company's boss, Leslie Benzies, assured them there was a plan to get things back on track and said the negativity they'd seen was uncalled for. Then he pivoted, alleging internal and external forces had been working to scupper the Mindseye launch. He told the assembled workers, who's been informed they faced redundancy just a week earlier, there would be an effort to root out saboteurs within the company. I find it disgusting that anyone could sit amongst us, behave like this, and continue to work here, he said. According to a transcript of the meeting verified by BBC Newsbeat, staff who worked at the studio say they were stunned, and not only by the strength of the language, they simply didn't believe him. As far as they were concerned, there was no conspiracy, and the reasons for Mindseye failure were clear. Former staff had this to say: Build a Rocket Boy's first project was everywhere, described by one former employee, Jamie, not their real name, as a multiplayer role-playing game RPG based in an open-ended futuristic city. I thought we had something quite special, says Jamie, who left the company in 2022. To fulfill the vision, Jamie says Mr. Benzies requested new ideas and features be added at breakneck speed, too fast for them to be properly implemented. The studio's main focus would eventually shift to Mindseye, a game originally intended to be offered as an experience within everywhere. Leslie never decided what game he wanted to make, says Jamie. There was no coherent direction. This style of working plagued the project from the start, they say, and would be a sign of things to come. This sounds pretty damning. When you look at it, not only did Benzie build this studio to make something called Everywhere, which was like a multiplayer RPG project, but then they also flipped the game and made it into Mindseye. That's when you know you don't have a true product direction of what you're trying to build. And this is after they got funding for $200 million or 200 million euros to help fund this project, and they also had over 448 employees attached to it. That's how much that studio grew. So what you're hearing is somebody that seems a little unhinged, doesn't understand how to develop a game when it comes to actually making a decision on what type of game you're trying to build, but also somebody that is going to be pointing the fingers and changing things drastically. Now, if anybody has worked in the software development business or understands how things work within product, when you change things in a knee-jerk reaction type of way, it's going to hurt production and it's going to hurt your team because they don't understand what they're building. They don't know the point of it. They understand that things are just going to be changing wildly. And so what they're doing is just sitting there building whatever the boss says and not understanding how that connective tissue goes with everything else in the game. Now, what happens after that is things start to break. Because if you're building one thing, it might break something else later on. If you're building another thing, it might hurt something later on down the line. That's the way things work in development. And that is something that the article mentions, is that with these crazy radical changes, it started hurting them. Former lead data analyst Ben Newbon says it was common for staff to be caught off guard by knee-jerk decisions from upper management without proper explanation. The letter further allegates that leadership repeatedly refused to listen to its experienced workforce. Ben, whose team was tasked with collecting feedback and presenting it to management, says there was rarely any response when they flagged issues. A lot of the points that we were hammering home on were just ignored and just never actioned, he says. His former colleague's associate producer, Marge, says the studio's culture also discouraged individuals from speaking out. Marge, whose gender-neutral pronouns, says their own attempts to raise concerns were laughed at in meetings with bosses. The staff also accused Mr. Benzies of micromanaging the studio. So when you hear this, that people bring things up or complaints within the studio or complaints within the workforce of, hey, maybe this feature that you want in the game isn't going to make it, or it doesn't really help fulfill what the game is supposed to be, that's an issue. People are not going to stick around for that. And I'm bringing all this to attention because this was done in October, this article was. So for the last several months, it seems like the CEO or the people running this company have been laying the groundwork for, hey, this is a new marketing scheme to get up where we're going to get attention and we're going to be saying that people are sabotaging us, and it's going to be like this culture war thing between gamers. That's not going to work. I mean, the game, if you look at just the reviews online, including on Steam, just don't paint that picture. It talks about how the game released really in a rough state. There was a lot of bugs. Things didn't work. AI didn't work. NPCs were just walking in circles. Things just didn't work, and you released a broken game. That's all that happened. Now, to go back to these allegations talking about how they're going to get these people that hurt them, well, that company that they were talking about, Ritual Network, actually commented on this because journalists reached out to them. This is what they had to say. Ritual Network is a creator support platform and is not involved in the matter you referenced. We are not aware of any legitimate legal action involving Ritual Network and have not been provided with any evidence supporting these claims. Any suggestion that the Ritual Network is connected to these allegations is incorrect. Now, Insider Gaming reached out to Builder Rocket Boy for comments on these allegations, and this is what they said, the own studio. We don't comment on leaked internal communications. Sadly, we do have evidence that there has been a coordinated campaign to purposely and maliciously damage Builder Rocket Boy's reputation and undermine confidence in Mindseye. We are working with our legal team and taking steps to address this. So, all in all, I just think that this seems kind of crazy to me, because I'm not understanding how developers who their own workforce is speaking out against them, talking about how they completely flipped development of the product, how they're changing what Mindseye or Everything was. That was the code name for what they were working on, called Everything. And then they make it into a game like GTA because that person that has that studio and runs that studio comes from that GTA mindset. So he thinks, okay, let's just make that game and I'm sure it'll do well. I think Mindseye got a lot of hype around it for that year after that trailer because people were starved for anything close to GTA. GTA 4 came out 15 years ago and everybody has just been starved ever since for the next GTA. So when you see something similar to GTA, people get excited for it. And Mindseye was not there. It should not have been compared to that. And the studio, I think, in my heart, kind of liked that comparison. At least the higher ups, because it gets them hype, it gets them people talking about their game, but they can't meet that expectation because the people in charge are nowhere near as polished or nowhere near as good as the people that are building GTA, at least from a leadership perspective. Not to mention a studio perspective of how many people working on GTA and the money put back behind that game. So Mindseye altogether is just another excuse for developers to act in an embarrassing fashion, which is pointing the finger at somebody else, talking about how gamers in this culture war and content creators are destroying their game and that we shouldn't listen to them. Stop trying to silence people for releasing a bad game. Maybe look internally and understand that, hey, maybe what we could have done should have been better internally. One of the studios that I've seen recently was Obsidian Entertainment. And I know that's kind of out of left field, but just stick with me for a second. Obsidian Entertainment a week ago or a few days ago talked about how the games that they released last year, aka The Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed, didn't meet expectations and sales for them. And they didn't say, wow, it was a culture war and all this stuff and pointing fingers. What they said was, man, that sucks. What can we do better? Can we change the way we make games? That is the most humble, awesome way of looking at this. When you release something that doesn't stand out or it just didn't resonate with the customers that you're trying to reach, maybe you should look internally and understand we need to adjust the way we develop games and maybe the way we market them and how we're making them. That's something that I don't think Mindseye leadership is going to do, or To Build a Rocket Boys leadership is going to do. That is just not going to happen. They're going to completely attack everybody that attacks this game. They're going to completely silence anybody talking about this game in a negative way, and anybody talking about it in a positive way is going to love it. The other caveat is this. They're talking about all these sabotages and everything going on internally, and it's espionage at the grandest scale. Okay, the funny thing is that they talk about this when they release one of their biggest patches. So everybody thinking about Mindseye or might check it out on Steam, it's already got one of the biggest patches that they've given out to the game in their history. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the game is in a pretty decently polished way, right? Because overall, the game so far, when it launched and got these bad interviews, it was not done well. It didn't launch in a good state. And you might be asking me, well, what did the patch do? Well, I'm going to read you directly what the patch says in the patch notes that the developer themselves brought out. Update 7 introduces a brand new refresh and another step forward in overall polish. Guided by player and community feedback, the teams continue to push improvements and more updates on the way. This update focuses on smoothing campaign flow, making objectives easier to follow, and continue to refine AI behavior. Please keep the incredible feedback coming. You're making a real difference. Look at that. You're getting feedback, you're answering stuff, and all the stuff that people talked about, which were the negative things at launch, you just improved on. We talked about AI behavior, all these things, making the campaign a little bit more easier to flow. It's kind of funny how you're making all these changes now and then talking about how you're being sabotaged. So when people do think about Mindseye and they might check it out, it feels like a better game if they do want to play it, but you're already trying to discredit people that talked about your launch. This just seems utterly weird to me. I don't like the way how everybody's trying to make it a culture war every time a game fails. I don't like that developers are saying we shouldn't trust all reviews. I don't like that. I don't think it's the right message to send to gamers. And I don't think it's the right message to send to developers across the industry, because some of them might start buying that there is this grand scheme to destroy their games, when in reality, they're just not hitting with gamers, and gamers are going to express the way they feel, and that's the whole point of art. Game creation is an art, and you're putting it out there for people to judge or get whatever they want out of it. And if people find it that it sucks, they're going to tell you it sucks and move on. That's all that's going to happen. So I think it's incredibly embarrassing that developers continue to just attack the people that they are trying to serve or get the money from, aka the gamers and the customers. Maybe just stop doing that and understand that the game that you made just flopped on its own merit because you didn't develop it in the right way, and you could have done things differently. And right now, while you're patching it, you're trying to change those things up. Focus on the game, not the lawsuit. Nobody's talking about your game or your gameplay. They're talking more about your lawsuit and your espionage instead of the game that should be doing the talking. That's the beauty of gaming. No matter what anyone says, it's the game that is going to do the talking. The gameplay is going to do the talking because we can feel it in our hands and we can play it. Gamers can't be fooled in that way. That's just what it is. So make a better game, patch it if you want, revitalize it, give it a new birth, whatever you want to call it, or try to make something else because your game's just not going to go anywhere. That's all that is. And that's all it's always going to ever be. And that's a kind of a warning shot across the bow to all developers. Shape up, make better games, and gamers will reward you with it. Look at the Steam charts, look at everything else. It's usually polished games that people really enjoy, and it's the games that people love, and it's kind of the crazy ideas. This is why indies are dominating. This is why certain games that no one's ever heard of all of a sudden get word of mouth and dominate in sales, because people enjoy it, and it was made under the right circumstances with the right people marketing it to the people that want to play it the most, which is the gamers. Maybe do that. But let me know what you guys think. I want to know what everybody thinks, because I found this to be insanely wild. And there's all this other stuff in there about like some of the corruption going on at the studio, a lot of people that were internally fighting and all of this. And it just seemed like a very toxic environment. And I want to know what gamers think about that. Do you think that Mindseye has a case with this grand scheme that's going on, that's sabotaging their game for no reason when they sabotage themselves? Or do you think that gamers need to be treated a little bit better and kind of looked at as the customer instead of the enemy? Go down below and let me know. And again, if you want to see more content like this, hit that like button and that subscribe button. I'm always on here talking games. And you can follow me on Twitter at Zalker87. I'm always on there sharing videos, kind of talking about the gaming news, seeing what's going on. Plus, I like interacting with everyone there, so let me know. And like always, let me know what you're playing down below. Are you playing Mindseye? I'm sorry. You're not playing Mindseye. Are you playing any other game out there? What are you playing? Right now, I'm playing Black Myth Wukong. I'm on chapter 3, I think, or 4. I'm not too sure. It's one of those. I'm enjoying that game. It's amazing. I'm pretty late to that. I know that game came out a while ago. I just never played it. And I'm jumping into it and absolutely loving it. I might make a video about that game because it's so insane. It's so good. And again, nobody talks smack about it. It was just a banger game that came out and people bought it and supported it because it was great. So yeah, go down below and let me know what you're playing. And that's all for now. And like always, remember, enjoy your gaming. Later.